Not too high, Paul. I'm not that tall.
My notes timed out. Good evening, and welcome to the Explorers Club. My name is Paul Tangy, and on behalf of the Explorers Club Public Lectures Committee, our committee chair, Natalie Cash, or my co-chair, and the Explorers Club president, Richard Weiss, I'd like to start by thanking all of you tonight for joining us here. Since 1904, our club has come together to form a community promoting the scientific exploration of land, sea, air, and space. And since 1922, every Monday night we've gathered for a public lecture here as part of our core mission of science, education, and service. Your presence here tonight makes you a part of that community. Your support tonight makes this tradition possible, and so for that, we thank you. Please raise your hand if tonight is your first time in the Explorers Club. Welcome, you belong here. Please raise your hand if you're an Explorers Club member. Oh, that's awesome. The chairs and us are doing some quick visual metrics on attendance, so great to see so many members here tonight. Okay, so I hope everyone remembers who raised their hand, particularly if it's your first night. In order to order a drink at the bar after this, please find one of those Explorers Club members to bring you as a guest. So for our plan tonight, in just a minute, Natalie is going to introduce our speaker, and then we'll move into our moderated panel. At the conclusion of the panel, there'll be an opportunity to ask questions, and then following that, we will adjourn, and the bar will be open till 10 p.m. And so with that, it's my honor, there's a lot of honored people here tonight, but it's my honor to introduce my co-chair and the Explorers Club newest elected director, Natalie Cash.
Thank you, Paul. Thank you, Paul. It's an honor to serve with you on the Public Lectures Committee and now on the Explorers Club Board of Directors. And welcome to all of you this evening. Equally exciting, I have the privilege of introducing tonight's speaker. And that is CoverGirl and recipient of this year's new Explorer Award, biologist, EC50 awardee, and biodiversity champion, Dr. Rosa Vásquez Espinoza. Now, look, I got two cards. This is an accomplished doctor here. You listen to this. Rosa is a Peruvian chemical biologist and National Geographic explorer who integrates her Andean Amazonian heritage and learnings in traditional medicine that she gained from her grandmother and integrates that into her work. As a founder of the Amazon Research Internacional, Rosa unites science and advocacy, collaborating with indigenous communities to illuminate and protect Amazonian ecosystems. Her groundbreaking work includes becoming the first microbial explorer of the Amazonian boiling river and leading the first chemical characterization of Amazonian stingless bees and medicinal honey in Peru. She has also co-created the interconnected ecosystem-based learning program, engaging hundreds of students in nature and sustainability. Her unique approach to blending indigenous knowledge with modern science has garnered accolades from the American Chemical Society, including their Leadership Award, and features in NPR, National Geographic Magazine, Forbes, ABC Studios, and more. From microbes in boiling rivers to animals that self-medicate and shamans who dream with plants. Dr. Rosa Vásquez Espinoza, her work shows us that healing is woven into the fabric of nature. Tonight, she will reveal how the earth knows to heal itself and what we can learn from its oldest teachers. The presentation will be immediately followed by an expert panel discussion on the radical art of giving nature rights. But first, it is Paul and I's distinct pleasure to welcome back to the Explorers Club podium, Dr. Rosa Vásquez Espinoza.
Thank you to everyone for being here today. And thank you so much for that beyond kind introduction. I am very excited to share with you a different aspect to what some of you may have heard me speak about before. And I want to start by telling you one of the most beautiful stories that I have ever heard that the Ashaninka people of Peru have asked me to share with the rest of the world every chance we get. And for that, I want to take you to what the beginning of time would have looked like. For the Ashaninka, at the beginning of times, everything was dark. And it was cold and even scary. And there was nothing that we see in our beautiful planet today. There were spirits, nonetheless. Some were good, generous spirits, and some were bad, mischievous spirits. And then one day, the god, the Avireri, rose and created beautiful mountains in the day and the night. But he wasn't satisfied with that. And so, very playfully, the god Avireri decided to turn the different spirits into different forms of life. So, for example, spirits that were beautiful and kind were turned into flowers. Spirits that were a bit aggressive were turned into fire ants. Spirits that were considered with really positive energy and uplifting were turned into hummingbirds. And the human spirits that made the best masato, that is a fermented drink that is central to Amazonian culture and social aspects, was turned into the Amazonian stingless bee that makes the best honey. And if you have ever heard about my work, we have a long-standing project on Amazonian stingless bees. If you've never heard of these fascinating creatures, as the name suggests, they cannot sting you, which is why I'm posing with them on that cover, a very generous Explorer Club. But what is one of the most fascinating aspects of the project is that they make, in fact, a very special kind of honey. It's considered the liquid miracle in the Amazon, and it was one of the top 2 ingredients that all Amazonians that I personally spoke with, from the Ashaninka to other cultures, used to treat the symptoms of COVID. With scientific information in a published paper, we have validated this knowledge, proving the first scientific chemical analysis that traditional knowledge was right for a very long time. What is beautiful is that the communities know what kind of bee to go to for a specific disease. For example, the stingless bee that nests on the ground, on termite nests, it's best, that honey is best to treat eye cataracts or eye infections. If it's a different kind of bee that nests on a specific tree, then that honey may be best for infertility. And so on for the more than 14 diseases that we have documented are being used to treat with this. We have multiple other projects ongoing from that, but what I want to draw your attention to is how did they first? It is a good time to mention that there is poisonous honey too, that can be quite toxic. So was that the case? Or was it from oral storytelling, hearing it from our ancestors? But how did they acquire the knowledge? It's almost like the chicken and the egg. Where did it first start? And the closest we have come to get in terms of clues was when an Ashaninka woman told me that they had seen anteaters stealing this medicinal honey. The anteaters have tongues that are very, very long, I think close to 2 meters long. So they find the wild hives, and then they stick their tongue in there, and almost like a Winnie the Pooh scene, they steal all of their honey. Maybe it's just for nutrition. Maybe it's the food they find. Perhaps maybe there's also a medicinal component too. Could it have been that through a process of observation and over many, many generations, that was the first clue that local people had to also go to that honey? So my central question to this brief talk is, where does healing wisdom come from? And why am I even focusing that conversation today on? Because I think across all countries, all ages, all cultures, and all interests, one thing we can all relate to is healing. We all need it, whether we're babies growing up, whether we want the approach of Western medicine or traditional medicine, or whether we're seeking healing of the mind and the spirit. It's something that unites humanity. And when we approach it, both through a traditional angle, but also with modern science, I think we are expanding the languages in which we are speaking to others. Some may be drawn to numbers and data, and some may be drawn to stories. And so that takes me to tell you just very briefly about one of the first projects I led, and I have to give a shout out to one of the amazing panelists we will have here later, Andrés Ruzo, right there. He made this incredible ecosystem first known to the world, the sacred boiling river of the Peruvian Amazon. Shout out, he has an amazing TED Talk about it, so I won't go into the details, you have to watch it. But it is, as the name suggests, a boiling river, an extremely hot space. That anything that falls into it naturally dies. What happens when you put chicken in a boiling pot of water? So for a long time, it was believed that nothing could survive, until, of course, you bring in scientists. And so we developed a partnership with Andres and his incredible team, and this became part of my PhD thesis, to look at the only life forms that, against all predictions, can indeed survive in the hottest of the hottest spaces we can find in the Amazon rainforest. And these are known as extremophiles. These are extreme forms of microbes that, as the name suggests, they love the extremes. Some may love the extreme heat. There are some extreme microbes that love the deep pressures of the deep ocean and many other ecosystems. And the reason why you may be wondering, why am I talking about microbes if I was talking about healing wisdom, is that when we look into the genetics and the chemistry of these extraordinary extreme microbes, we learn that part of the chemistry that they produce, it's beneficial to their survival. That is how nature continues to live. And some of those molecules are actually antibiotics or anti-cancer molecules that give this organism the added ability to be able to survive where nothing else can. Almost as if nature knows how to protect itself, how to heal itself. That's a very slow-moving cyanobacteria that we collected from one of the hottest spots of the boiling river at about 98 Celsius, and we were able to recreate its living conditions at different temperatures, but still enough for it to survive in the laboratory. So we're talking about a biochemical communication. Somehow nature has this inherent knowledge on what to do with its DNA and its chemistry to produce things that helps it survive, okay? It's not only microbes, plants do this too. And they're there are incredible number of examples on how different plants around our planet produce different sorts of medicinal compounds that are potentially in your pharmacy today, life-saving drugs that plants and flora know how to produce, whether it's to deter certain insects from eating them, or if it's to tell the plant next to it, hey, be careful, you know, something's happening or my soil is drying up. They have a language that we cannot see, but that we can sense with chemistry. So parallel to this communication between microbes, the same happens with plants. So we talk about biochemical communication. They don't speak, but they are doing something, plants, microbes, back and forth. There is another form of communication that also leads to this acquiring of healing wisdom. And I will refer to now to perhaps one of the most known practices in the Amazon rainforest, and that is the use of ayahuasca, or yagué also. Some people use it for recreational purposes, trying to come to the Amazon, sometimes not fully understanding where it comes from or why people are using it. And I think it's important to share that the shamans and the healer practitioners of the Amazon, one of the main reasons that they use ayahuasca for is because that's how they communicate with the natural world. Through the dreams that they see and that they acquire through ayahuasca, they receive messages. They receive messages, perhaps, on what plant to use to treat a specific disease. this is a normal practice that they study very hard for, this type of spiritual communication that allows them to access that world. Gonna pause for a minute because I have a bit of a wild experience that I do go more into detail in my book, so I'll just share it briefly. But I had spoken with several shamans to try to understand how does this acquiring of knowledge happens, because I find it fascinating and something that not many understand. And I had one experience where I consumed ayahuasca and suddenly I became a black jaguar. As wild as that sounds, I had this experience where I was in the Amazon, in the jungle, as an animal. And suddenly, I could smell medicinal plants. And there was a specific yellow flower that I just instinctually knew through the chemistry of my abilities as an animal, and perhaps of some of the molecules that the plant was producing and releasing, although we cannot see it, that I knew that would be beneficial for my cubs. For most, that's a good story, and that sounds cool. For me, that was the beginning of an obsession. How does that happen? And is that even a thing? And that led me to learn about a field called zoopharmacognosy. And I won't go into detail about this because one of the other amazing panelists that you'll hear from today published an incredible work that dives farther into how animals self-medicate. So when animals are hurt or ill, they know where to go in nature to heal themselves. How do they do that? Did they see the older animal leaders? Is it a trial and error? Perhaps is there some chemical communication now across species from plants and animals that we yet don't know? And one of the reasons that I was fascinated by that topic, besides that crazy jaguar story, is because we had been hearing a collection of stories from different indigenous partners that they do see animals quite often consume medicinal leaves and plants that they too consume. It's normal for them. Yes, of course. The tapir knows where to go when they're sick. But no one has yet conducted that study in the Amazon rainforest. And so shout out that Elodie, together with an incredible group of Ashaninka young scientists in training that we've put together, will be leading this type of work for the first time with our team in the field very soon. Nature gives us many lessons. It gives us lessons on the ability of resilience that all forms of life have to survive, to become better and more efficient. Nature also gives us lessons that reminds us that we are all part of the wild. And the concept of healing isn't reserved for humans only. I think it is belonging to all forms of life, from the tiniest microbes in some of the most extreme places on our planet, to stingless bees, to plants, and to larger forms of life as well. And why I think that becomes even much more of a powerful conversation when we talk about protecting nature is because it reminds us that nature has the inherent right to exist, to survive, to have access to the ecosystems, the plants, and the rest of the environment that allow them to have that ability to heal itself. And I think in this critical time of our humanity, it is just essential that we remember these lessons as well. That gives cue to our panel, which will begin in just a minute. But I do have a call to action. If anybody wants to learn more about our work, please say hi after this. Please help support to conduct more of this work. Our whole premise is that we want the next generation of explorers and scientists to come from these spaces, for them to be sharing this. I had the opportunity to do this because my family went from extreme poverty to be able to put me in school and learn English, but not many get to do that. But I think now it's essential that we do. So maybe next time it'll be these young Ashaninka women and scientists here with you. Thank you very much. And at this moment, I will call my amazing panelists, Andrés, Elodie, Connie, please, and Celeste, to join me. And I do have two short clips that two of our amazing indigenous partners have sent to share with to share with you today. I added some translations, so if the translations are not perfect, like bear with me because I did it automated on the phone. But I'll start with the first of the two short clips.
Soy César Ramos Pérez, presidente de ejecutor de contrato de administración de Reserva Comunal Ashaninka. Represento a 25 comunidades, a 8,000 habitantes ashaninkas, hermanas y hermanos, en lo cual nosotros nos dedicamos a la conservación. Para nosotros como pueblos indígenas, la naturaleza, el bosque, la montaña, el cerro, son nuestra parte de convivencias como indígenas. En lo cual la naturaleza para nosotros es importante porque ahí es nuestra ferretería, ahí es nuestro posta, nuestros recursos donde comemos, nuestro mercado. Por lo tanto, sin territorio, nosotros no somos indígenas. Para nosotros es el importante de nuestros recursos naturales para convivir. Nosotros somos el conservacionista desde nacimiento hasta hoy, lo seguimos practicando porque es nuestro territorio, es nuestra ferretería, es nuestra salud, donde estamos todos vivos, la naturaleza, el ser humano, y por lo tanto nosotros cuidamos día en día en todos los recursos.
And we have a second short clip.
Hola, soy Betty Torres, mujer de Cucama y presidenta de la Asociación de Meliponicultores de la región Loreto. Para mí las abejas y la naturaleza están vivas, tienen derecho a existir, a disponer de tener un ambiente sano. Es por eso que desde Loreto nosotros venimos trabajando en cuidar las abejas, ya que estas nos brindan alimento, cultura, economía. Así que todos a cuidar a nuestras abejas nativas.
I think we had, thank you. So we have four incredible people here with us. I'll start first with Andrés, who is an incredible all-round scientist, educator, conservationist, Amazonian conservationist. You also received the medal, I think it was last year, in EC50, and you were very kind to nominate me for EC50 for the first time, so you elevate everyone around you, and you're extremely generous, and it's an honor to have you here today. Boiling River expert, so read about his work. We also have Constanza Prieto, who is the director of Latin America for Earth Law Center and one of the most passionate advocates for rights of nature, an extremely generous woman committed to bringing this concept that nature has rights all around, and an amazing partner of our work too. Elodie Freymann, she's part of the EC50 class this year. And we met about 2 years ago when she approached me with one of the most extraordinary and revolutionary ideas in science and conservation that I have ever heard. And so it's just an honor to have you here and to get to collaborate with you and for everybody to hear about your work. And Celeste, an animal lawyer with more than 20 years of experience, who was just recently at the United Nations headquarters trying very hard to advocate for the rights of nature with her expertise and all of her knowledge. So thank you for joining us today. So the first question that I have for you guys is, For those in the audience who may or may have never heard what rights of nature is, or may have heard about it but is not fully clear on what that looks like, what are some key examples of species and ecosystems that have been granted rights worldwide? We start with you, Connie, please.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Rosa, for this amazing presentation, and congrats for everything. Yes, well, right of nature, maybe I want to start with a small clarification about what imply right of nature. At one moment, right of nature was just a philosophy, a movement, but in 2008, right of nature became a concrete framework in Ecuador where recognized the right of nature for all the ecosystem of that country. So that has been an amazing step, creating something from one philosophy to a concrete legal framework. Of course, this legal framework already exists in indigenous custom and law and customary law of them. So we are kind of doing a bridge from the traditional knowledge to the Western law for the foreign people who maybe really clearly we don't live under those kind of values. So when we talk about right of nature, we talk about a framework, a concrete framework that recognizes intrinsic value of nature from a holistic perspective view. So we not only recognize rights, but we recognize principles of responsibility, interconnection, and so humans are responsible to protect the inner limits of the earth. And when Rosa, you talk about which examples, we can see we have some legal framework protect all nature in their territories. For example, Ecuador, so every ecosystem, every animal has right. Others take other perspectives, saying we will protect some elements of our nature is step by step. So some countries recognize rivers, mangroves, mountains, forests with intrinsic rights, and also a smaller group of countries recognize species with inherent rights. This sounds a little confusing, but every element, the Constitutional Court of Ecuador say, even if it's protected the whole nature or some element, that is right of nature because there is an intrinsic relationship between the ecosystem and species. So a species cannot live without the ecosystem. Ecosystem couldn't live without the species. So I just want to introduce two examples very quickly. One is the Marañón Case River, which recognizes ecosystem, freshwater ecosystem, but the Marañón River as holder of right, and the indigenous people as its guardian. Last year was the big year of the Marañón River. This year, our partners, Mariluz Kanakiri, was recognized with the Goldman Prize for this amazing work, and it's from Peru. So this is one example. It's very landmark case because not only say the river has right, but describe all the right of the river, right to the ecological flora, right to biodiversity, to be free of pollution and others, and the indigenous people are the guardians. So, and also do organize a mosaic of international convention can be like the catalyzing of right of nature. So was an amazing decision. And also when we talk about the species, maybe Panama is the key of this recognition. We have Cali here who work with her NGO, and also with the collaboration of the Erlo Center, we promote a law basis in the scientific work of Cali, like to recognize the right of turtles in Panama, and we recognize exactly like a specific right for the turtles. And I would say maybe some people think is confusing because turtles are one species, but this law say is the right of the turtle and their ecosystem. We understand the turtle are part of the ecosystem, and without the turtle we can have this ecosystem, and without this ecosystem, the health ecosystem, we can have this turtle living there. So it's this holistic perspective and ecosystem perspective that make the right of nature so important for our work.
Thank you. That's, I think, so perfectly put, that it is just a legal extension of traditional knowledge from the Amazon to all corners of our planet. How can science better define or defend what some species or ecosystems urgently need right now? Andrés.
I can't talk very well sitting down. I'm going to have to stand up and I have to move my hands. But so a couple of things. I'm a scientist. I also went to business school. And one of the things that really helped me understand rights of nature was one sentence. This building, the Explorers Club, or any big corporation, has technically human rights. They can own a bank account, they can get royalties, they can do a lot of things. Ultimately, how do we get that right extended to natural systems? I also have worked for, at this point, most of my life with indigenous communities and traditional knowledge keepers. One of the things that I've learned most from working in the Amazon is redefining the word sacred. In the beginning, I started thinking, oh, the cathedral, the mosque, the temple, that's sacred. But now I see it differently. To be sacred, there's a more ancient meaning, and it is what gives life. If it gives life, it is sacred. If it is clean water, clean air, that interpersonal communication that keeps our brains healthy, right, mental health, that is sacred. Ultimately, this is advocating towards that. In traditional knowledge, we used to have taboos. Oh, you don't fish this fish at this time when the moon is like this, right? Victorian science said, whatever, that's dumb. Modern science that is now listening in on a closer way. We're finding that, wait a minute, that's when they spawn, right? There is a value to this. We humans depend on these systems that give life. We are over 8.2 billion human beings. If you were born in 1974, the human population has more than doubled in your lifetime. 1954, the human population has more than tripled. And we're not using our energy or resources very well. We need to start something different. We need to redefine the sacred. We need to redefine the taboo. And I do think that this is one of the best ways for it. And without good science, it has no foundation. So we have to be those new eyes.
Thank you. That's Andrés. That was beautifully put. And Elodie, would you want to add anything to that?
Yeah, I mean, I echo everything that you just said. I think science is incredibly important right now. I think with my work, because I study how, as Rosa mentioned earlier, how wild animals find and use medicinal plants or medicinal resources generally in the wild. And so the way that I've been thinking about my work is that when I started, I was trying to learn about chimpanzees because that was the study that was the species I was focusing on in my PhD research. But by the end, I was trying to learn from them because there's so much that these animals know about the natural world that we haven't tapped into. They have these incredible, incredible knowledge systems that they have because they are deeply embedded in the ecosystems that they live in, and they have figured out, we're still figuring out how they figured it out, but all of these amazing, amazing gifts that nature has provided, these answers to pathogens and parasites that they know how to stay healthy in the wild, and why wouldn't they have evolved the ability to find those plants and those resources to help them do that. So really, again, I think our work now is to sort of shift our perspective from, again, trying to learn about animals to trying to learn from them, treating the other inhabitants of this planet as our teachers, not our subject matters. And I think that's, to me, the future of science and also the future of conservation.
This is incredible, by the way. I'm like fangirling for everyone here. Celeste, is there any other examples or part of the story regarding rights of nature that you would like to speak to or highlight?
Thank you, Rosa, for having me, for your great work. Thank you for everybody. The origin of right of nature is not today. That's very important to know. The origin of this theory was in the 70s. And I'm a witness of this because my mentor was one of the first men who spoke about rights of nature. He was Godofredo Stutzin in Chile in the 70s. In 1973, he began to speak about this, but we stopped our democracy with a catastrophe, el golpe de Estado, no.
¿Cómo se dice golpe de Estado? A coup.
A coup. But after this, Mr. Stutzen continued working, and he wrote about the issues in the equilibrium, balance. It's a text that make me understand what is the origin of this. Using the word, I have been putting attention. Resource, conservation, animals are not the key word of the correct language for speak about rights of nature. The correct language is to speak about sentience, consciousness, rights of others, nature, recognize nature not as a resource. A great example of this is the Estrellita case in Ecuador. In 2022, Estrellita, in 2019, Estrellita was a monkey, and he was in the ecosystem. Shoot. But a person take the monkey, bring to their home, and they pet the monkey. The monkey don't need this. Monkey need the ecosystem, right? That's a real case of the importance of the recognition of the base of right of nature is the recognition that other one have rights, have the possibility to have consciousness, to decide what she or he want to eat, with medicine to take, at what time go to sleep. Monkey can decide, I don't want to play with the girls. And the monkey was taken to the zoo, and the monkey at the end died. The family, that the monkey continued in the court, asking for my monkey. And the court said that the monkey has their own interest of their own life. The monkey died, but the monkey had their own life. And it was a base for something very important in Ecuador. The law, it's called the organic law for animals. Now in Ecuador, they are working for this project. I'm supporting this and speaking to the assembly, and it's very difficult because the problem is when the people in Ecuador begin to speak about animals as a resource in the middle of the discussion of animals as subject of rights. That's the center of this problem. And if the people who is working in the Congress or assembly don't know about this concept, they are not right. We cannot have a conversation with people who don't speak like us. That's the reason it's very important, the education about the concepts, the language, the real language about the right of nature. It's a key case. I think it's a very important case to put attention because we love animals, right? But animals should stay where they want to stay. Thank you, Rosa.
And Estrellita, ¿verdad? For Estrellita, that means little star, which I think is beautiful. It's like a guide in this path. So we talked about rights of species and ecosystems. Let's transition into the rights of traditional knowledge itself of people. There were two incredible indigenous leaders, Apu Cesar and Betty, that wanted to share that short video with you guys to get their voices heard and share more about what it means to them rights of nature. So my first question, and let's start with you, Connie, is can traditional knowledge itself be considered something that holds rights? And what does that even look like with practical examples?
Thank you. Well, I think when we talk about indigenous knowledge, especially or traditional knowledge, we cannot like talk about just an abstract element, you know, oh, the knowledge, how we protect this idea or this intellectual property, you know, because like the indigenous people have a deep relationship with their territories. This relationship create cosmovision or worldviews, create knowledge about the biodiversity, create the costume, also the customary law. So when we talk about this kind of intangible space between their existence and their relationship with the territories, we are talking about is that intangible space can be protected or how we can protect it. So it's complex because there are different levels of knowledge or different elements who are fragmentary protected, I would say. So for example, we have been working with Rosa about, or we had conversation about how we can protect this traditional knowledge, for example, about the Ashaninka people in their relationship with the biodiversity, or the traditional knowledge about medicine, bees, like beekeeping. So we can say one level of protection is provided by the Convention of Biological Diversity and the Nagoya Protocol through an instrument called, for example, biocultural community protocols. So the community, like if we go to the past, the community has like their customary law and their knowledge, and they transmit their knowledge orally to their communities, but they don't interact with anyone other than the community. But now they are interacting like with governments, with scientific people, with other scientific people, like with different interests, you know? So there are many factors. So they want to protect their traditional knowledge, their genetic material in their territories. So knowing these problems, the Convention of Biological Diversity create this instrument, which are the protocols. So the communities can list, for example, their knowledge, can list, for example, their knowledge regarding biodiversity, or their tradition, or their language, or their costume, and establish some kind of measure of protection. So they will agree, for example, with this scientific person, so how they will maintain the relationship, how they will release the information, what he has to do, what the community has to do. Is kind of a negotiation. But the community establish that condition, and also they will establish how will be retributed if, for example, universities or scientific people can share or use that kind of knowledge, for example, or how they will be the retribution of the use of that knowledge. So that is a way of protection. So yes, they can be protected. I would say is maybe a weak protection from now. I think governments have to work more actively in that protection, because alone they are very vulnerable, the communities, but I think governments have to play a better role there. But also there are other levels of protection of the community in the governments of the territories and lands, and also how they can develop their own law and the sacred relation with the territories, which are protected by other conventions. So I think the first relationship from them with the territories is the basic relation which has been protected. Why? Because without the territories they cannot exist, and without them they cannot exist, you know. Mm-hmm. And then we can add the level of protection of the traditional level. But the first relationship, and most important relationship, is protect how they can exert their role and their governance and their territories. Because without that, they have nothing, you know. They are defined by the territories, and the territories are defined from them. So it's complex, but I will answer yes. We can be protected.
Well, and I think Apu Cesar said it very beautifully as well. Without territory, they're not indigenous people.
Exactly.
I think that's a very
100%.
powerful sentence.
Mm-hmm.
And so you are basically, I think the first level that you're referring to is tying it to something very specific. If it's a negotiation, for example, medicinal honey to be sold, or if it's accessing rivers to extract certain resources. I guess I'll point out, this is perfect transition to Andres, because I know you have a very clear, beautiful example that everyone in this room could relate to. How could that look like in the future regarding, for example, extreme rivers?
Again, sorry, too ADD to sit. A couple of things that, thank you again for this. One, I listened to a talk by a Lakota Sioux woman, and she said a question was, where are you from? And she said, I am from where my dead are buried. Now, I'm a third culture kid. I grew up between Peru, Nicaragua, and the United States. And that question was always very tough for me. But the idea, learning from these systems, from these knowledge holders, that you are nothing without your land, because that's where your dead are buried. That's where your DNA that's in your blood is suddenly in the ground. That's where the food that you're eating is coming out. So you are a part of it. My very simple answer to that is bring them on as part of the team. More than anything else, interact with them, laugh with them, bring them on as part of the team. They don't need anyone to speak for them if you give them a place to speak. That's simple.
And could you just extend to give the example of, for example, PCR and Yellowstone? Yeah.
Perdón. Okay. So I'm a geothermal scientist. I work in hot springs, volcanoes. And for me, I think one of the biggest priorities that we have in conservation is actually the protection of geothermal systems. Hot springs, right? You're like, okay, weird, Andres, sure. They're small, they're easy to protect, they're all over the place, but their extremophile ecosystems, just like Rosa mentioned, is what gave us modern medicine. Modern medicine, you've heard of PCR, right? Our genetic copy machine. You've heard of CRISPR, our ability to hack the genetic code. CRISPR comes from an extreme salty environment. PCR comes from Thermus aquaticus, which we only got because Thomas Brock was able to study the mushroom hot springs in Yellowstone, which we only got because Yellowstone was protected. Now, here's the great tragedy. Because Yellowstone did not have rights to get royalties, they could have gotten 1% of 1% of 1% of the proceeds gained from PCR. Trillions of dollars. They could have never had a financial problem ever again, and on top of that, owned half of the state of Wyoming. So, this is one of the issues. For me at least, again, I'm thinking more pragmatic, quick, what can we do right now? I think that that's something that I want to see. I want to see how we can get rights to these ecosystems, especially in light of biotech, because if we can protect it, we can fund it. And the sad truth is, the money doesn't talk, it screams, right? So how do we fix that? And I think that might be one of the quickest ways to hack the system.
It's fascinating, actually, to get to hear from all of your perspectives. I'm personally also very excited, and I think this is quite a unique opportunity because there are not many spaces to have this interdisciplinarity of perspectives regarding rights of nature. And so I will extend from, this maybe abstract concept that Connie was trying to land into something practical and tangible, and I think Andres had a beautiful example of something that could also seem abstract, like microbes, because we don't see them, but then having this direct impact on an entire national park and more. If animals, Elodie, demonstrate this inherent knowledge, and you have seen this, documented it, and communicated about it, if animals demonstrate inherent knowledge, like self-medicating or even ecosystem engineering, should these be a basis for legal rights? And what is your opinion on that?
Okay, my favorite subject. So I guess I'll backtrack a tiny bit and say a little bit more about what I specifically do. So my PhD was in, as I said, animal self-medication, chimpanzee self-medication, and what I found, summing up a PhD in a few sentences is very hard, but broadly, I identified several trees that are key to the forest I was working in, called the Budonga Forest in western Uganda, that seem to be used as medicines by the chimpanzees, and fascinatingly also by the local human communities that were living around the forest as well. So there's this clear overlap in the wild medicine cabinets across human and non-human species. And I tested some of these barks. I was focusing on barks by the end of these tree species in the lab, and I found that they had some really cool antibacterial and anti-inflammatory properties that were specifically really helpful against pathogens or bacteria that are becoming drug resistant very fast. So this has incredible implications for drug discovery. But it also made me scratch my head a bit ethically, because what do you do when you discover, potential novel medicines? And I realized it's only possibly a matter of time before pharmaceutical companies and commercial interests start realizing that non-human animals can lead us to new medicines, and that's obviously incredibly profitable. So what I also started thinking about was this idea of traditional knowledge. So I was talking to local healers in the community that I was working in, and I was thinking a lot about human traditional knowledge. And sort of the next line of thinking was, well, do non-human animals have traditional knowledge as well? We know non-human animals like chimpanzees, dolphins, elephants, and probably most of the other animals, we just haven't discovered it yet, have culture. But why aren't we calling it traditional knowledge? And if you look at the definition of traditional knowledge and traditional ecological knowledge, a lot of animals actually really possess that. They meet the definition. We just call it culture. So I have been working on this little thought experiment, which is what happens if we extend the same protections that we grant humans against the biopiracy and exploitation of their intellectual property or their traditional knowledge. Can that be extended to non-human animals as well? And what would that look like? And I think it's really, really important as we learn more about my own field, zoopharmacognosy, animal self-medication. I think it's going to start coming up. And I think we have to be prepared and preempt the potential exploitation of non-human medicinal knowledge. But there's all of these kind of nuances that are actually, they're really interesting to think about. How do you create the equivalent of the Nagoya Protocol, which is kind of the guidelines for, or the protocol that protects against the exploitation or biopiracy of human traditional knowledge? How do you extend that to non-human animals that can't necessarily, sit around and negotiate on their behalf? How do you have mutually agreed terms? How do you have mutual benefit sharing? And what Andrés was saying is something I've been thinking about a lot. Can we get pharmaceutical companies, can we get commercial actors to fund for the conservation of these wild medicine cabinets of these forest pharmacies? Can this money, because there will be money, can this money be channeled toward the conservation of these wild spaces that are the first line of healthcare for both animals and people? So that's part of what we're going to be working on with Rosa in the next few years. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating. We are seeing it all across human knowledge, animal knowledge, invisible microorganisms. Celeste, in your opinion, could granting rights to animals change conservation strategies, and how?
I think we should create animal rights today more than in the past, because we have created a system of animal rights that's not that we need really to advance in conservation, in conservation of the planet. The level of animal rights in many countries that have been is about pets, but not about another animals. I'm thinking about monkeys, wildlife. I'm thinking about cows. I'm thinking about animals for food. Farm animals. We need to begin to speak about the farm animals. I think it's hard to speak about farm animals in the middle of a wildlife conversation, because at the end of the day, today farmers are devastating territories of wild animals to put cows producing meat, right? That's the problem. So I think in two levels of animal rights or animal law we should work. First level is species that we today know that exist, right? Same, as in dogs, cows, monkeys, all animals, every animals. And we should begin to speak about species that we don't know that are being created in this moment in a laboratory. And that it's called, for me, I was speaking about the Star Wars theory. Have you seen the Star Wars movie, right? Yeah? Yeah. The animals, rare animals, are slaves in this movie, are slaves. If we don't today create a law for all animals, all non-human species, in 20 years we will see walking on the street human person with other animals, new species, as slaves. I think it's possible. And today the conversation should advance in which animal law we have to create in order to create a new order. It's called ecological law. And my professor was speaking about it in the 70s. Ecological law. And in ecological law, animal rights is not only about pets. It's about the planet, the nature, the rights of nature, the ecosystems. It's, for example, to say that it's a crime killing one animal who is the center of an ecosystem. We don't need to kill 10 or 20 or a community of animals to say that it's an ecocide. Ecocide may be kill the only one animal who put order. Sometimes one animal put order in the house in an ecosystem. But today we're speaking in a conversation of ecocide. How many animals is a community? No, it's not about many animals, about maybe one, maybe bees, maybe what, and for finish, what is an animal? Who is an animal? How are we speaking about the whales, the dolphins, or turtles? Today seems we are speaking only about dogs or cats. I think that is not enough.
That was beautifully put, and I will use that opportunity to share. I just briefly talked about the collaborative work that we've been doing on Amazonian stingless bees, but something we're also really proud to be sharing is that we are working on the first World Declaration on the Rights of Nature for stingless bees and their ecosystems. And part of that, we want to learn as we go, right? See what cases are out there, and we are humans. We can only do the best that we can, and we will improve, and that's all we can do. And so with that humility in mind, we have been gathering information to co-design with the communities, with indigenous leaders, women, men, from different ages and across regions, to incorporate all the aspects that they deem important to be included, not just the rights of the bees to exist, or the Amazon to be clean, or the flowers to be present, for the bees to be healthy, but even what does it mean in relations to the people, because in the case of stingless bees, they're central to their culture. The story of Masato, that's a drink that they will drink at the end of every single day. It is part of the family, it's how you make friends. And that is how they see bees and honey. But there is also part of their economy. It's part of how some of communities are now making entire family sustenance every year and being able to send their kids. So how do you protect that from becoming extractivist and from becoming exploitative, and to be in balance to what they need? So it is a constant work, and we're very proud to be working actively on that, and it is our goal to share that declaration with the world this year. So more to come on that, and I just wanted to highlight that Connie had made this beautiful slide. I don't know if there's something you want to add briefly before we're concluding regarding this.
Maybe sorry. Maybe I will add something from your last words. Like when we talk about right of nature, we in general we just don't talk about only provide rights. Also, many of these frameworks means obligation for the state toward the relationship with a species, and also there are part. We never talk too much when we talk about of nature, and it's something you said, like humans and nature are together, and we need to imagine a society where like we are creating a development in harmony with nature. And that is the part no one talk about right of nature. We don't want to separate nature from people or people from nature and do like a conservation space untouchable. We want to learn to grow together and be part of the same society, so the indigenous people can live from their beekeeping, but respecting the natural limit of their hives and the bees and the society of bees, So we have to learn to where is that space of growing and respect that limit. And I think that is the most challenging part, because we are failing there. So how we imagine like these societies, a small society of bees or indigenous people or Peru, like all this sphere of growing, we're failing to create this harmony with nature. And that is the most interesting part from my perspective.
And before we close and open the room for questions, I would love to do just a small activity that we did in the field last time, which is to ask each of you to please share one word that you feel after this discussion. Let's start with Andres.
Excited?
Challenges.
Synergy.
Mother Nature. Mother.
For me, it's compassion. And with that, thank you so much. So we have some time for questions for anyone in the panel about this topic, about some of the other amazing work that these professionals do. Does anybody want to start? Yes, please.
Thank you. This was a beautiful panel and really has us thinking. But I wanted to go back to ecological law and the stuff that happened in the 70s and why we think that didn't catch on stronger then and what we can do to amplify now. I think back to international whaling and playing of the humpback whale songs in the 70s, and that being the most, highest selling environmental record. What can we do today to make sure that this catches on worldwide while the window is closing?
If everyone gets, I guess, a little bit of time, education. I personally think the single most important thing to do right now is reframe the way we look at schools. I think all schools should be educational nodes where we build those connections. You didn't talk about science. You talked about whale songs, stirring something emotionally, moving people to action. I think that right now, teachers, scientists, explorers need to come together in a new way. We've got a really awesome program here at the Explorers Club that's brand new that we launched yesterday that we're hoping to do more of this. And now that you're a board member, así que, I really do think that is the best and only way forward right now, because we're at the limit. We are at the physical limit of what we can do now. So that's what's different from the 70s.
Thank you. Does anybody else want to add something?
Maybe I will say, it's important to amplify the voices of the territories. I think that is key. We have been seeing that with the case of the Marañón, when you put the correct person to talk, for example, in international forums, like, for example, when Mariluz Kanakiri go to this space, it was denied for her in the past, or never she imagined she could do it because no one told her she was a lead, When she expressed her voice in, for example, before a state, changes happen, but that voices are enclosed in their territories. We have to facilitate this places for indigenous people, for scientists too, but I think the voices of the territory are very important to make a change.
And I will add, for anybody that is not familiar with that case, Marie-Luz received the Goldman Prize, which is like the Nobel Prize for environment, so not a small feat. And I will add to that, I think that is part of what many in the room are doing, definitely everyone in this panel as well, is how do you bring these indigenous voices forward in a tangible way? I sit a bit in between both worlds. I have indigenous roots, but I was Western educated. And so I think then the next level is to have the young, perhaps Ashaninkas or Kukamas or Shipibos or other people that, whether they speak English or not, have the ability and just given the space. We are doing our first event like this in Peru, and this is not a plug, but just I'm actually really proud to be creating this one-day symposium in June where we are going to be highlighting women in science, STEM, and tech and academia, but also giving the platform for indigenous female leaders of different ages to come and have the same platform and the same voice, which actually hasn't happened in Peru to that level. So if anybody wants to be a part of that, please do reach out after. And I'm doing if you guys want to add anything to that before we go to the next question.
Hey. Yeah, I think I love the rule 3. First, education. Second, we need to create a quota of representation of nature. It's just a political decision that we need today, and we are late with this. Because as we have today a woman political quota to make decisions, indigenous quota to make decisions. That's very good because it's the first way to amplify the voice of indigenous people from the territories. I think we need to hear the voice of animals, of the voice of ecosystem in a quota, right? In different political space. I'm a politician too. And sometimes we have to speak about the little council, the little group, and political parties, Congress, and assembly, and I don't know. And the three part is the language. Today in this space, we think we are speaking in a right language: ecological law, nature, right of nature, indigenous people, animals. Everything is right. But out of this space is different. People don't know what's the right language. And when we write a treaty, when we write law, they make big mistakes. And these big mistakes, it's not a mistake. We should create a wide of right language to this political forum space or conference and teach about this, because it's the only way to advance, to go in order to create the ecological law that we need.
And I'll just add briefly that I think, speaking for the animals, animal science progresses very slowly. And in the 70s, it was only like, a couple years after Jane Goodall discovered that chimps use tools. And we've come so far from there, but it's taken so long. And there's still debate in the chimpanzee world that whether or not chimps teach, whether chimps have empathy, these kind of super basic questions that, in my opinion, if you spend 5 minutes with a chimpanzee in the field, you can sense it. But to prove it with numbers and data takes a really, really long time. But we're getting there, and I think we're now making these amazing strides in animal communication, in animal empathy, in animal sentience, and I think that's, I hope, going to actually merge or bridge between this educational side that we need and this emotional side that we need, because we can understand that as people. When we read a study in the BBC or in the New York Times or whatever about, whales talking or, all of these things that we can understand, I think that will hopefully pull some heartstrings and make a difference. But it's been slow going, and we're only really beginning, we're just beginning to understand how incredible animals are.
Yes, please.
Oh, thank you. My name's Dove. Thank you for being here and bringing up this subject that's not talked about very much. So when you bring up consciousness and animal consciousness and ecosystem consciousness and nature consciousness, there is a pull from the other side, which the mentality or the world mentality about animals and nature as a resource. So the shift is our choices, right? Each person's choice. Because if you start acknowledging animals having rights, how do we eat them, right? I mean, for a lot of people fight for animal rights, but then they go and have a meal eating animals. So how do we give them rights and respect their space when it's almost an element of shifting from controlling nature, controlling animals as resources, to consciousness, acknowledging their consciousness, acknowledging their language, acknowledging them as people, just like we are people. You know, people used to eat, and still in cultures eat whale meat. But we know so much more now that whales are sentient beings. They have families just like us. They teach their children just like us. So how do you guys see that shift happening for us to see them as people, you know, and to respect them on that level?
So I will start, and then I'll give the floor. And I would like to point to the video of the first leader we had, Apu Cesar, who still refer to the jungle both as living and a resource. Because when you are out there, you do survive based on the jungle. The rainforest is their home, is where they get some wood to make their homes. It is where they get their medicine, where they get their foods. They may not have anything else to eat except what the rainforest provides them. So I think it's not about going to the extremes or even romanticizing, because I think that is excluding indigenous ways of living. I think it is about respecting people's perspectives, but finding balance. And I think that is why the scientific aspect is key, because you're right. We do have information now and evidence and data that we didn't have many years ago that allows us to make much more informed decisions. It is a challenge that we are so many billions of people in this planet, but we also have the cultural component to that, and stripping that rights to those people. If we were to turn around and tell Apu Cesar, you cannot be doing that anymore, you are not just stripping one opportunity or one resource, you are ending their lives, in a sort of speaking. So in my perspective, it is just all about finding a balance. Difficult conversation, but I think it just requires both science, culture, education, and everything that everyone has talked about. Does anybody want to comment on that? Yeah.
Hi, I'm Celeste and I'm vegan. I'm vegan. It's the paradigm of veganism. Because I think everything is written. Indigenous people 300 years ago didn't eat many animals to stay alive. I was speaking in Ecuador, I remember 2 years ago, I was speaking for people from animals movement. And they are all vegan. And I told them, the problem is not indigenous people. The problem is not indigenous people, because when they decide to kill one animal, they pray to the earth, Mother Earth, and everything. They are not an industry. They are not the predator, yeah? The problem today is the industry, the farm factory. Farm factory is the problem. The problem is not indigenous. Once they kill one animal, or they sometimes keep the equilibrium in the ecosystems. They know when an animal is making problems. But today, veganism or vegetarianism or plant-based economy or food can make a change in the economy. We are working in a constructive way from the animalism and veganism. Every year I come to the Animal and Vegan Summit to learn and to speak about this. Because if we think the economy, we can return the territories for animals, for wildlife, for example, for indigenous, for rivers, for oceans. Today we speak about fish, for example. It's not tons. They are individuals. They feel, right? And if the reflection is not about the feelings or consciousness, could be the reflection of, could be a good reflection about the new economy, because we are killing the planet with our way to create meals and everything. I think veganism is the future.
Andres, you wanted to add?
I'll add a quick, super fast thing to keep it moving. I've been very honored to get to, and I'm sorry, you're probably not going to like this, but I've been very honored on multiple continents to be invited to traditional hunts. And in posing that question, just from general interest, the thing that comes up is a right to a noble life and a right to a noble death. I totally agree with you on the industrial aspects being ignoble in the way that they live and the way that they die. We do have a balance problem between resource and population that we have to solve. And yeah, I think it's that quality of life aspect that is really critical.
We have time, I think, for one more. Or
super quick.
A lightning question.
Yeah.
lightning
really quick.
question. Okay, you choose. There will be time for drinks afterwards, right?
Okay, so I'll make it quick. I think that everyone in this room can agree that more people need to know about this. As many people as possible, in fact. And one of the tools that we have handy is this technology. So my question to you is, in spreading the data, in spreading everything, your knowledge, are you including in that the dimension of energy efficiency in your technology so that it is aligned with everything that you're doing and is not contributing to, as Mrs. Celeste said, sorry, English went out the window, so that we don't contribute to killing the planet just by sharing the data?
Real fast, I actually specialize in geothermal energy. Geothermal energy is, I would argue, one of the very best technologies we have available, both for the passive side, which is the energy conservation side, and the active side, geothermal power production. Now, that is one of many different types of ways to produce renewable, sustainable resources that minimize our impact to the planet. And this is an active, when we need you guys just as well. I personally am still advocating for the extended use of geothermal energy in Peru and also internationally, because if we have a baseload power source that's heated by the heat of the earth that won't go out for another 4.5 billion years, I think that's a good way to start. So yes to your question, that's a hard one right now.
And so with that, there's time for fellowship, and I encourage you to ask additional questions to all the panelists when we finish this.
His hand was up first for a long time.
I'm sorry, Stig. I promise you can ask some questions down here. How about a round of applause for our panelists?
I tried, my friend, I tried.
And for our amazing awardee, I think, for giving full evidence tonight about why you are the new Explorer recipient. I also want to thank everyone who's here in the audience. And so without specifically identifying anyone, this can be a challenge for when we invite you downstairs to the bar. But in the audience tonight was my expedition leader in Greenland up until last week. There is an expert on insect protein in the audience right now. The hero of the Thai children's cave rescue is in the audience here tonight. There are amazing people in the audience tonight. Every one of you who's here tonight is an amazing person. Thank you for coming. The winners of the Teaching Fellowship. What makes the Monday night lectures special is you all showing up for these. So please continue to show up. Next Monday is Dr. Pat Wright is going to be screening an incredible film about Madagascar. The following Monday, 2 Mondays from now, we'll be highlighting the EC50. 3 Mondays from now, we'll be doing a lecture about the astronaut Ed White lost in the Apollo mission, a 7-year search to recover his brother missing in action for Vietnam. Please meet each other after this. Thank you so much to all of our distinguished speakers tonight.
I'm just going to give the final word to Rosa to close us out.
Thank you so much, and let's go have a drink.